The night they cast her out, the moon did not hide behind the clouds. It watched. The wind carried the scent of pine and cold stone across the center of Mooncrest Pack as Evelyn Hart stood alone beneath the silver glow of the full moon. Nearly every wolf in the territory had gathered around the circular square, their faces illuminated by lantern light that flickered against the darkness. The air felt heavy, thick with judgment, anticipation, and something else she could never quite name. Evelyn kept her eyes lowered. She had learned years ago that meeting someone's gaze only encouraged them to look longer, to stare, to wonder what was wrong with her. At 22 years old, she had never spoken a single word. Not one. Not even as a child. Not even when her mother had passed away 5 winters earlier. The silence inside her had become a prison everyone else could see, but no one could understand. A sharp crack echoed through the square as Alpha Marcus Thornwood struck the ceremonial staff against the stone platform. The crowd immediately fell quiet. Evelyn's stomach tightened. She already knew why she had been summoned. Every whispered conversation over the past month had pointed toward this moment. Every sideways glance. Every conversation that stopped when she entered a room. Alpha Marcus stood tall beneath the moonlight, his dark cloak shifting in the wind. His expression carried the cold certainty of a man who believed he was protecting his people. Mooncrest has carried this burden long enough, he announced. The words drifted through the crowd like smoke. Evelyn's hands tightened around the sleeves of her worn gray coat. Burden. The words settled over her chest with familiar weight. Around her, several wolves nodded in agreement. Others avoided looking directly at her altogether. Somehow that hurt more. Alpha Marcus continued. For years we have waited for change. For healing. For a sign from the moon goddess herself. His gaze landed on Evelyn. None came. Evelyn felt dozens of eyes shift toward her. She stared at the stone beneath her boots. Tiny cracks spread through its surface like frozen rivers. Easier to focus on those. Easier than seeing disappointment reflected back at her. Somewhere in the crowd, a child asked a question in a small voice. The mother quickly hushed him. Evelyn swallowed hard. Even the children had been taught to fear what they did not understand. The Alpha raised the staff once more. Evelyn Hart, daughter of Amelia Hart, you are hereby released from Mooncrest Pack. Released. Such a gentle word for exile. A cold gust swept through the square. Evelyn's blonde hair lifted across her face. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then came the rustle of shifting feet and quiet murmurs. The sound reminded her of leaves scattering before a storm. She should have felt anger. Maybe sadness. Instead, there was only numbness. The kind that arrives after years of hearing the same judgment dressed in different words. Broken. Defective. Wrong. Evelyn slowly lifted her eyes. Above the crowd, beyond the rooftops and lanterns, the moon hung enormous in the sky. White. Silent. Watching. Just like her. Then something strange happened. A faint ringing touched the edge of her hearing. Soft. Distant. Almost impossible to notice. Evelyn frowned. The sound didn't come from the square. It came from somewhere beyond the forest. Beyond the mountains. Beyond the territory itself. The ringing faded as quickly as it appeared. She blinked. Had she imagined it? Alpha Marcus stepped down from the platform and gestured toward the eastern road. You may take what belongs to you and leave before sunrise. Evelyn nodded once. No words. There had never been words. The crowd slowly parted to create a path through the center of the square. A path leading away from everything she had ever known. Yet as she took her first step forward, the strange ringing returned. Louder this time. Not a sound. Not exactly. More like a distant whisper brushing against the edges of her mind. Evelyn stopped. The sensation lasted only a heartbeat. But within that heartbeat, she felt something impossible. Recognition. As though someone, somewhere, had been waiting for her. The feeling vanished. The crowd continued watching. Nobody else seemed to notice. Evelyn lowered her gaze again and began walking toward the road leading into the darkness beyond Mooncrest. Behind her, the pack returned to their lives. Ahead of her stretched miles of forest, uncertainty, and silence. Yet deep beneath the ache in her chest, another feeling stirred. Small, fragile, ancient, and for the first time in her life, Evelyn could not escape the feeling that the silence inside her was not empty at all. It was waiting. The eastern road disappeared into the forest long before midnight. Evelyn Hart walked alone beneath towering pines that swayed gently against a sky filled with stars. The farther she moved from Mooncrest, the quieter the world became. No whispered judgments. No curious stares. No voices discussing what should be done with the silent Omega. Only the steady rhythm of her boots against the dirt path and the distant call of night birds hidden among the branches. Yet the silence she had always known felt different now. It no longer seemed empty. The strange sensation from the square remained with her, lingering like a forgotten melody she could almost remember. Every few miles she caught herself pausing, listening for something she could not explain. Nothing ever came. Only wind moving through the trees. By dawn, exhaustion settled into her muscles. She had traveled nearly 15 miles without stopping. The forest gradually opened into rolling hills covered in silver grass that shimmered beneath the morning light. Evelyn climbed one of the ridges and finally allowed herself to rest. She lowered her small canvas bag beside a weathered oak tree and sat against the trunk. The air smelled clean here. Fresh. Untouched. For a moment, she simply closed her eyes. Images from her childhood drifted through her mind. She saw her mother's smile, felt gentle fingers brushing tangled strands of blonde hair away from her face, heard the sound she could never make herself, laughter. Her mother had never treated her silence as a flaw. While others searched endlessly for cures, Amelia Hart had simply accepted her daughter exactly as she was. There had been nights when Evelyn would wake from troubling dreams and find her mother sitting beside the bed, holding her hand until sunrise. Sometimes Amelia would speak softly about distant places beyond the mountains. Forgotten kingdoms, ancient wolves, stories older than memory itself. One memory surfaced stronger than the others. Evelyn could not have been older than 7. Rain had tapped softly against the cabin windows while Amelia sat beside the fireplace reading from a worn leather book. Evelyn remembered pointing at an illustration showing a massive stone crown surrounded by moonlight. Her mother had smiled. Then she had spoken a sentence Evelyn never fully understood. Some names, my little moon, are not meant to be forgotten. Evelyn opened her eyes. Her breath caught. The memory felt unusually vivid, as though someone had placed it there moments ago. She frowned and reached into her bag. Among her few belongings rested an old silver pendant that had belonged to her mother. The chain was tarnished with age, but the crescent moon carved into its surface remained clear. Evelyn turned it over in her palm. She had carried it every day since Amelia's passing. Suddenly the pendant felt warm. Not hot, just slightly warmer than the morning air. Evelyn blinked. The sensation vanished almost immediately. She stared at the silver surface. Nothing appeared unusual, yet an uneasy feeling settled over her. Before she could think further, movement caught her attention. Far below the hill, near the edge of the forest, stood a figure. An elderly woman wrapped in a dark cloak. The distance between them had to be at least 200 yards, but somehow Evelyn felt certain the woman was looking directly at her. A chill traveled through her spine. She rose to her feet. The woman did not move, did not wave, did not speak. For several seconds, they simply stared at one another across the valley. Then a cloud drifted across the sun. The shadows shifted. When the light returned, the woman was gone. Evelyn's pulse quickened. She scanned the hillside again. Nothing. No footprints. No movement. Only tall grass swaying in the breeze. Then the ringing returned. Stronger than before. Not outside her mind this time. Inside it. A soft whisper seemed to brush against the edges of her thoughts. One word. So faint she almost missed it. Home. Evelyn froze. The voice vanished immediately. Yet her heart continued racing as she stared toward the distant horizon beyond the hills. Somewhere far away, beyond forests she had never crossed and lands she had never seen, something was calling her. And for reasons she could not understand, it already knew her name. The whisper followed her for 3 days. Not constantly, not loudly. It arrived in fleeting moments between ordinary sounds, slipping through the rustling trees and drifting across the quiet spaces of her thoughts. Sometimes it came while she crossed a stream. Sometimes while she rested beneath an old cedar. Once it appeared while she watched a pair of deer move through a field of waist-high grass glowing gold beneath the afternoon sun. Each time, the voice remained just beyond understanding. A single breath. A distant call. Gone before she could grasp it. By the 4th morning, Evelyn had traveled nearly 60 miles from Mooncrest. The landscape had changed again. The rolling hills gave way to dense forests where ancient trees stretched hundreds of feet into the sky. Their massive trunks twisted toward the heavens like pillars supporting a forgotten cathedral. Sunlight barely reached the ground. The air felt cooler here, carrying the scent of moss, rain, and something older. Something buried beneath centuries of silence. Evelyn paused beside a narrow creek and filled her canteen. The water was icy cold against her fingertips. As she straightened, her eyes caught an unfamiliar symbol carved into a nearby stone. She stepped closer. The marking had been worn by time, but she could still make out the shape. A crescent moon surrounded by 7 stars. Her pulse quickened. The symbol looked strangely familiar. She reached into her coat and pulled out her mother's pendant. The crescent moon engraved on the silver surface matched the carving almost perfectly. Evelyn stared at both symbols. The pendant had belonged to Amelia, her grandmother before that. As far as she knew, it was simply a family keepsake. Yet standing there in the middle of an untouched wilderness, seeing the same symbol etched into stone that appeared hundreds of years old, she felt certainty settle into her chest. This was not coincidence. The whisper returned. Home. The word echoed softly through her mind. Evelyn looked deeper into the forest. The sensation felt stronger now, clearer, like a thread gently pulling her forward. She hesitated only a moment before following it. Hours passed beneath the towering canopy. The deeper she traveled, the stranger the forest became. Trees grew larger. Their bark shimmered faintly silver in places where sunlight touched it. Massive roots emerged from the earth like ancient walls. More symbols appeared, some carved into stone, others hidden within fallen pillars consumed by vines. Evidence of something forgotten, something that had once existed here. Near sunset, the forest abruptly opened into a clearing. Evelyn stopped. Her breath caught. Before her stood the remains of an enormous structure. Broken arches rose from the earth at impossible angles. Fragments of white stone walls stretched across the clearing, half buried beneath moss and ivy. Time had claimed much of it, but enough remained to reveal its former grandeur. This had once been a city, not a village, not a settlement. A city. Silence hung over the ruins. No birds sang here. No animals moved through the grass. Even the wind seemed hesitant to cross the forgotten stones. Evelyn slowly stepped forward. Her boots touched a cracked road hidden beneath layers of earth and roots. She ran her fingers along a nearby pillar. Strange symbols covered its surface. The same crescent moon. The same 7 stars. Then she noticed something else. Footprints. Fresh ones. Her heart skipped. They were faint but unmistakable. Someone had walked through these ruins recently. The prints disappeared between 2 collapsed towers ahead. Evelyn's pulse quickened as unease settled over her. If another traveler had passed through, where were they now? The forest around her remained completely still. Then the whisper returned once more. Not from within her mind this time. From somewhere ahead. Faint. Almost human. Evelyn could not understand the words. Yet she understood the feeling they carried. The voice was waiting. And for reasons she could not explain, it sounded relieved that she had finally arrived. Twilight settled over the ruins like a veil of silver mist. Evelyn moved carefully between broken columns and crumbling walls, her footsteps softened by thick layers of moss that had claimed the ancient city centuries ago. The strange voice no longer spoke, yet she could still feel its presence somewhere ahead, like a distant lantern glowing beyond the reach of sight. The air carried an unusual stillness. Not the peaceful quiet of nature, but the silence of a place that had been waiting for something for a very long time. As darkness deepened, faint lights began appearing throughout the ruins. Evelyn froze beside a collapsed archway. Tiny silver sparks drifted through the air between the broken stones. At first she thought they were fireflies, but their movement felt different. Slower. Purposeful. They floated through the city in gentle streams, gathering near the center of the ruins before disappearing into the shadows. Evelyn watched them for several moments. Then she noticed something impossible. The lights seemed to pause whenever she stopped moving, as if they were watching her too. A chill brushed her skin. She tightened her grip on her canvas bag and continued forward. The ancient road beneath her feet became clearer as she moved deeper into the city. Beneath the dirt and roots, intricate patterns emerged in the stonework. Crescent moons. Stars. Wolves with crowns carved above their heads. The symbols repeated everywhere. Evelyn found herself wondering who these people had been, why their city had vanished, why no one had ever spoken of this place. The deeper she traveled, the stronger the sensation became. She was not discovering something forgotten. She was returning to something that already knew her. An hour later, she reached the center of the city. Her breath caught. A massive structure rose before her. Even in ruins, it dwarfed everything around it. Towers stretched toward the night sky. Marble stairways climbed through shattered archways. Moonlight reflected across white stone that somehow remained untouched by time. It looked less like a palace and more like a memory carved into the earth itself. Evelyn stood motionless. The silver pendant resting against her chest suddenly grew warm again, much warmer than before. She pulled it free from beneath her coat. The crescent moon engraved on its surface glowed faintly. Her pulse quickened. The light lasted only a few seconds before fading. Yet when it disappeared, she noticed something she had not seen before. Directly ahead, beyond the palace gates, another symbol shimmered briefly upon the stone floor. A crescent moon surrounded by 7 stars. The exact same mark. The same emblem she had seen on the hill and carved throughout the city. Slowly, Evelyn approached. The symbol vanished as she neared it, but a narrow passageway hidden beside the grand staircase revealed itself in the shadows. She was certain it had not been visible moments earlier. The opening descended beneath the palace. Into darkness. Every instinct told her to turn back, to wait until morning, to find shelter somewhere safer. Yet another feeling rose stronger than fear. Curiosity. The same force that had guided her across forests and mountains now pulled gently at her heart. She stepped into the passage. Cool air surrounded her immediately. Ancient stone walls stretched downward beneath the city. Dust covered everything. The staircase seemed endless. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The deeper she traveled, the more the outside world disappeared. No wind, no insects, no distant sounds from the forest. Only silence. Then, far below, she saw light. Not torchlight, not fire. A pale silver glow illuminating the darkness ahead. Evelyn slowed her steps. Her heartbeat echoed loudly in her ears. The staircase opened into a vast underground chamber. The ceiling disappeared into shadow hundreds of feet above. Massive pillars lined the room. Ancient symbols covered every surface. And at the center stood a single throne carved from black stone. Empty. Evelyn frowned. The strange certainty she had carried for days suddenly faltered. Had she come all this way for an abandoned room? She took another cautious step forward. Then she noticed the footprints. Fresh footprints. The same ones she had seen outside. They led directly toward the throne before disappearing beyond it into darkness. Evelyn's pulse raced. Someone else was here. Someone who had entered this hidden chamber before her. And somewhere within the shadows beyond that throne, she could feel a presence waiting patiently for her arrival. The chamber seemed to breathe around her. Evelyn stood motionless near the black stone throne while the pale silver light drifting through the underground hall cast long shadows across the floor. The fresh footprints remained clearly visible ahead, leading beyond the throne toward a corridor concealed between 2 enormous pillars. Whoever had entered this place had not left. The realization settled heavily in her chest. She listened carefully. Nothing. No footsteps. No voices. No movement. Yet the strange presence she had felt since entering the ruins remained stronger than ever. It lingered just beyond sight, patient and watchful. Evelyn slowly approached the throne. The closer she came, the more details emerged from the darkness. The structure was far older than anything she had ever seen. Symbols covered every inch of its surface. Wolves crowned with stars. Moons surrounded by rings of light. Names carved into the stone in a language she did not recognize. Her fingertips brushed the edge of one inscription. The instant her skin touched the surface, a sudden warmth spread through her hand. Evelyn gasped softly and pulled away. Images flashed through her mind. Towering walls bathed in moonlight. Thousands of wolves gathered beneath silver banners. A crown raised toward the stars. The vision vanished as quickly as it had appeared. She blinked repeatedly. The chamber returned. The throne stood silent before her. Yet her heart raced. The images had felt real. Not imagination. Memory. But whose memory? Evelyn glanced down at her trembling hand. The silver pendant resting against her chest had begun glowing again. This time the light remained steady. Soft. Gentle. Alive. She followed the footprints around the throne. Beyond it, the corridor stretched into darkness before opening into another chamber even larger than the first. The sight stopped her cold. Hundreds of statues lined the room. Ancient wolves carved from white stone stood in perfect rows facing a circular platform at the center. Some wore crowns. Others carried staffs or shields. Despite centuries of age, their expressions remained remarkably clear. Noble, proud, watchful, as though they were guardians standing eternal vigil. Evelyn moved cautiously between them. A strange sadness lingered in the room. Not grief exactly, more like remembrance. The feeling of a story left unfinished. Near the center platform, she discovered something unexpected. A book. It rested atop a stone pedestal untouched by dust. The dark leather cover appeared impossibly well preserved. Evelyn stared at it. The footprints ended beside the pedestal. Whoever had been here last had stopped at this exact spot. Slowly she reached for the book. The moment her fingers touched the cover, the chamber brightened. Every silver light floating throughout the room suddenly glowed stronger. The statues seemed almost alive beneath the shifting illumination. Evelyn opened the book. The pages were filled with symbols she had never seen before. Yet as her eyes moved across them, something impossible happened. She understood them. Not perfectly, not every word, but enough. Her breath caught. The first line read clearly inside her mind. The kingdom of Astrolith, protected by the 7 crowned alphas, endured beneath the moon for 1,000 years. Evelyn stared at the page. Astrolith. She had never heard the name before, yet something about it felt familiar. She turned another page, then another. Ancient histories filled the book. Stories of kings, wars, alliances, lost generations. Then a name appeared repeatedly throughout the text. One name written larger than all the others. The final king, the last ruler of Astrolith. Evelyn frowned. The letters shimmered strangely. She leaned closer. The name seemed almost readable. Almost. But each time she focused on it, the symbols blurred as though hidden behind a veil. Frustration stirred within her. Why could she read everything else, but not that? Suddenly the temperature in the chamber dropped. The silver lights dimmed. Evelyn slowly lifted her eyes from the page. Across the room, beyond the rows of ancient statues, a figure stood in the darkness. Tall, motionless, watching her. She could not make out a face, only the outline of someone who should not have been there. And for the first time since entering the Forgotten City, Evelyn was absolutely certain she was no longer alone. The figure did not move. It stood beyond the rows of statues, half concealed by darkness and drifting silver light. Evelyn remained frozen beside the pedestal, one hand resting on the ancient book. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. Every instinct urged caution, yet something about the presence felt strangely familiar. Not safe, not dangerous. Familiar. The figure slowly stepped forward. Moonlike light brushed across a long, dark cloak. Then another step. The silence inside the chamber deepened. Evelyn found herself holding her breath. The stranger emerged fully into view. He appeared to be a man in his early 30s, though something about him made age impossible to judge. Tall, broad-shouldered. His dark hair fell loosely to his shoulders, and his features seemed carved from the same stone as the ancient statues surrounding them. But it was his eyes that captured her attention. Silver. Not gray. Not blue. True silver, reflecting the light around them like polished metal. The stranger stopped several yards away. His gaze settled on Evelyn with quiet intensity. She expected surprise, questions, confusion. Instead, she saw recognition, as though he had known exactly who would arrive. The sensation unsettled her more than fear would have. Neither of them spoke. Evelyn could not. The stranger simply studied her. His expression remained calm, yet something flickered beneath the surface. Relief, astonishment, hope, emotions so brief, she almost missed them. Then his attention shifted to the silver pendant resting against her coat. His eyes widened ever so slightly. For the first time, his composure cracked. He took one careful step closer. Evelyn instinctively stepped back. The movement seemed to pull him from whatever thought held him. He stopped immediately. The distance remained between them. A silent understanding passed through the chamber. He would not force her closer. Minutes seemed to stretch. Finally, the stranger lifted one hand and pointed toward the ancient book, then toward himself. Evelyn frowned. She glanced down at the open pages. The symbols remained visible. The hidden royal name still blurred whenever she focused on it. Slowly she looked back at him. The silver eyes watched patiently. Then something impossible happened. The letters on the page began shifting, rearranging themselves. Not physically. Inside her mind, new words appeared beneath the ancient text. A translation. The final king shall sleep until the voice of the moon returns. Evelyn's breath caught. Her eyes darted across the page. More lines revealed themselves. Only she may awaken the path. Only she may remember what was forgotten. A tremor moved through her chest. Voice. The word felt almost cruel. She had never possessed one. Yet the text continued. She carries the last key hidden within silence. Evelyn slowly lifted her gaze toward the stranger. The silver-eyed man remained perfectly still. Yet now she noticed something else. Around him, tiny particles of silver light drifted through the air exactly like the lights outside. They seemed drawn to him, orbiting him, as though recognizing their master. The chamber suddenly trembled. Not violently, just enough for dust to drift from the ceiling above. Several statues brightened with pale moonlight. Ancient symbols across the floor began glowing one by one. The stranger turned sharply toward the far side of the chamber. For the first time, concern crossed his face. Evelyn followed his gaze. At the opposite end of the room, hidden behind massive pillars, shadows were gathering. Not darkness itself. Shapes. Tall figures formed from silver mist. Their outlines resembled wolves standing upright. Silent guardians emerging from another age. One after another they appeared. Dozens of them. Their luminous eyes fixed upon Evelyn. The silver-eyed stranger looked back at her. Then he lowered his head slightly. Not in warning. Not in fear. In respect. The gesture stunned her. Before she could process it, every glowing figure in the chamber did the same. Hundreds of ancient guardians bowing their heads toward the mute Omega standing beside the forgotten book. And deep within her mind, the mysterious voice returned once more, clearer than it had ever been before. Welcome home, Evelyn. The words lingered long after the voice disappeared. Welcome home, Evelyn. She stood frozen among the glowing statues, unable to pull her gaze away from the silent guardians surrounding her. Hundreds of luminous eyes remained lowered in respect. The sight felt impossible. Her entire life had been defined by rejection, by people looking past her, speaking around her, deciding her worth without ever hearing a single word from her. Yet here, beneath a forgotten kingdom buried beneath the earth, beings older than memory bowed their heads as though she mattered. The feeling unsettled her more than fear ever could. The silver-eyed stranger slowly raised his head. His expression had softened. The guarded distance she first noticed was gone now, replaced by something quieter. Recognition. He stepped closer, moving carefully as though approaching a frightened animal. The silver lights floating through the chamber followed his movements like stars drawn to the night sky. Evelyn remained where she was. She no longer sensed danger from him. Only questions. Thousands of questions. The stranger stopped beside the ancient pedestal and looked down at the open book. His gaze lingered on the pages before lifting toward her once more. Then he placed his hand against his chest. Slowly, deliberately. A gesture of introduction. Evelyn watched closely. He spoke a single word. The sound was soft, almost reverent. She could not hear it clearly, yet somehow she understood its meaning. Name. He was telling her his name. Or trying to. But the instant the word left his lips, the air shifted. A strange distortion rippled through the chamber. The sound itself seemed to vanish before reaching her ears. Not muffled. Erased. The stranger frowned. He tried again. The same thing happened. Whatever name he attempted to speak disappeared completely. Evelyn's pulse quickened. The realization settled over her slowly. The hidden royal name from the book. The blurred symbols. The impossible distortion. Someone had not merely hidden the name. It had been removed. Protected. Forgotten by the world itself. The stranger seemed unsurprised, as though this had happened countless times before. His gaze drifted toward the ancient text resting between them. Then he pointed toward a passage near the bottom of the page. Evelyn looked down. New symbols shimmered into focus. She read silently. When the king's name is lost, the kingdom shall sleep. When the voice remembers, the gates shall open once more. Her breath caught. Voice. Again. Always the same word. The silver pendant warmed against her chest. The sensation grew stronger with every passing second. Suddenly, another memory surfaced. Not her own. Older. Vast, moonlit towers reaching into the sky, crowds filling enormous streets, bells ringing across marble bridges, laughter carried by the wind. The city alive, whole, beautiful. Evelyn swayed slightly. The vision faded, but fragments remained. Emotions, faces, a feeling of belonging so powerful it left her chest aching. She had never seen this kingdom before, yet part of her somehow missed it. The stranger noticed her reaction immediately. Hope flashed across his face. Real hope, the kind someone carried only after waiting a very long time. Then the chamber trembled again, this time stronger than before. Several statues brightened until they appeared almost alive. Silver light flooded the room. The ancient book turned its own pages, one after another, faster and faster. Symbols glowed across every sheet. The windless chamber filled with a sound like distant voices speaking all at once. Evelyn instinctively reached toward the book. The moment her fingers touched the final page, everything went silent. One sentence appeared alone at the center of the parchment. Unlike the others, the words did not blur. They remained perfectly clear. Her eyes widened as she read them. Beneath the seventh moon, the forgotten name shall return through the one who was never meant to speak. The silver-eyed stranger stared at the page, then at Evelyn. And for the first time since she entered the ancient city, she realized he was not waiting for someone. He had been waiting specifically for her. The final sentence remained etched across the ancient page long after the silver light faded. Evelyn could not look away from it. The one who was never meant to speak. The words echoed through her thoughts like distant bells. All her life, silence had been treated as a weakness, a flaw, something broken inside her that needed fixing. Yet every path that had led her here seemed to suggest the opposite. The silence had never been a mistake. It had been part of something larger. Around her, the chamber began to glow more brightly. The silver symbols carved into the floor spread outward from the pedestal like streams of moonlight flowing across stone. The statues lining the hall appeared almost alive now. Their ancient faces seemed softer, hopeful, waiting. Evelyn felt the pendant against her chest pulse with warmth. Once, twice, then again. Each pulse matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. The silver-eyed stranger stepped closer to the pedestal. He never took his eyes off her. His expression held a mixture of caution and anticipation, as though he feared even the smallest interruption might break whatever fragile moment was unfolding. The ancient book suddenly turned another page by itself. Then another. The chamber filled with drifting silver particles. They rose from the floor, from the statues, from the very walls of the forgotten kingdom. Thousands of lights swirled through the air like stars awakening after a long night. Evelyn watched as new symbols appeared across the open pages. Unlike before, these symbols did not blur. They remained perfectly clear. A name was hidden there. She could feel it, not see it, not yet, but the presence of it filled the room. The sensation was overwhelming. Her chest tightened. Her pulse raced. Images flooded her mind once again. She saw towering gates opening beneath moonlit skies, wolves gathering in enormous courtyards, children running through streets lined with silver banners, music, laughter, life. Then she saw the silver-eyed man standing upon a balcony overlooking the city, not as he appeared now, but wearing a crown forged from starlight and moonstone. Thousands looked toward him with trust, respect, loyalty. The vision shifted. A great silence descended over the kingdom. The banners disappeared. The streets emptied. The city slept. And one thing vanished from every memory at once. A name. His name. Evelyn gasped softly as the vision broke apart. Tears blurred her sight. Not from sadness. From the strange ache of losing something she had never known. The chamber trembled gently. The silver lights gathered above the pedestal, spinning faster and faster until they formed a glowing sphere. At its center appeared ancient letters. The hidden name. For a brief moment, Evelyn could almost read it. Almost. Then the letters began fading. The name was slipping away again. The silver-eyed stranger's expression changed instantly. Concern flashed across his face. The opportunity was disappearing. The kingdom itself seemed to hold its breath. The glowing letters weakened. One by one they vanished into darkness. Evelyn stared desperately at the fading symbols. Something inside her refused to let them disappear. A memory surfaced. Her mother sitting beside a fireplace. A gentle hand resting against her hair. Some names, my little moon, are not meant to be forgotten. Warmth surged through Evelyn's chest. The pendant blazed with silver light. The final remaining letter hovered within the sphere. Then another appeared beside it. Then another. Not because the book revealed them. Because she remembered them. Somewhere beyond thought. Beyond memory. Beyond reason. The name had always been there. Hidden within the silence she carried since birth. The silver-eyed stranger took a slow breath. His eyes widened. For the first time, absolute certainty appeared on his face. He knew she had found it. And deep within her heart, Evelyn realized she knew it too. Evelyn stared at the glowing letters suspended within the sphere of silver light. The name existed now at the edge of memory, no longer hidden, no longer lost. It pulsed through her thoughts with the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. Around her, the ancient chamber had fallen completely silent. The statues no longer shimmered. The drifting lights no longer moved. Everything seemed suspended between one moment and the next. Waiting. The silver-eyed stranger remained motionless across from her. Yet his gaze never wavered. Hope and fear lived side by side within those silver eyes. Not fear for himself. Fear that after centuries of waiting, the final chance might still slip away. Evelyn felt the weight of that hope settle over her shoulders. She had spent her entire life feeling invisible, forgotten, unwanted. Yet somehow she had become the center of a story that began long before her birth. The pendant resting against her chest blazed brighter than ever. Warmth spread through her body. Not painful, comforting, familiar, like returning to a place she had left long ago. Memories flooded her mind once more. She saw the city alive beneath silver banners. She saw wolves gathering beneath moonlit towers. She saw 7 crowned rulers standing together upon a great balcony overlooking the kingdom. And among them stood the silver-eyed king. His face was younger in the memory, yet unmistakably the same. The people below looked toward him with trust. Then the vision shifted. Darkness did not come through war or destruction. It came through forgetting. One by one, memories faded. Names vanished. Stories disappeared. The kingdom fell asleep beneath silence. But one promise endured. One final hope hidden beyond time itself. The vision dissolved. Evelyn opened her eyes. Tears rested upon her cheeks. The glowing letters spun slowly before her. She knew the name now. She did not know how. She simply knew. The knowledge had always existed somewhere deep within her silence, waiting for the moment it was needed. The silver sphere brightened. The ancient book trembled softly upon the pedestal. Symbols across the floor ignited like rivers of moonlight flowing through the forgotten kingdom. The silver-eyed stranger slowly lowered himself to one knee. The gesture was deliberate, respectful, ancient. Every guardian statue surrounding them seemed to bow with him. Evelyn's breath caught. No one had ever looked at her this way. No one had ever treated her as though she carried something precious. The name rose within her heart. Gentle, certain, true. For 22 years, no sound had ever crossed her lips. Not one word. Not one whisper. Yet now the silence inside her felt different. It was no longer a prison. It was a doorway. The chamber glowed brighter. The silver lights gathered around her like a constellation descending from the heavens. Evelyn opened her mouth. For a brief moment, doubt flickered through her. What if nothing happened? What if she failed? Then she remembered her mother's voice. Some names are not meant to be forgotten. The fear disappeared. The name emerged naturally, as though it had always belonged there. A single word. Ancient. Beautiful. The true name of the king. The instant it left her lips, the entire chamber filled with radiant silver light. The forgotten symbols awakened. The statues brightened. The ancient city beyond the palace answered with a distant chorus of ringing bells. Evelyn staggered slightly as warmth surged through the kingdom itself. Across from her, the silver-eyed king closed his eyes. Relief washed across his face. Not surprise. Relief. As though a burden carried for centuries had finally been lifted. When he opened his eyes again, they shone brighter than the moonlight surrounding them. Slowly, reverently, he placed one hand over his heart. Then he smiled. The expression transformed him completely. Not a king, not a legend. Simply a man who had finally been found. And somewhere far above them, beyond the sleeping city and the ancient ruins hidden beneath the forest, the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, welcoming a kingdom that had remembered itself at last.